Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Delmar Chabad Center, and today we're going to talk about a work from the Rambam, the Maimonides, one of the biggest Jewish codifier in Jewish history. And the Maimonides was known as like the genius of the Jewish people, probably the greatest genius throughout the diaspora for the last few thousand years. One of his greatest books was called the Mishnah Torah, the Yad Chazaka. Now this Yad Chazaka really encyclopedized, and it was revolutionary at the time, all Jewish law. Can't get into it here so much, but the Talmud is fragmented. Yes, there are different, we call tractates or mesechtos of the Talmud. There is the laws of Shabbos, but it's hard to explain it, but it's very interrelated, the logical patterns between one idea in one Gemara and one part of the Talmud to the other. So therefore, it would be very difficult to finally learn throughout all the discussion and all the question and answering of the Gemara to finally, what is the bottom line? What is the law? And it's fragmented. Here's a law, and there's a law, and another part's a different law. And you really have to be an expert actually in the whole Talmud and put it all together like a gigantic jigsaw puzzle to really come out with the bottom line. Well, people did that at a time when they had the time and the knowledge to sit down and learn the whole Talmud. As the generations became weaker and smaller, and in a certain sense they didn't learn as much Torah, they needed really almost spoon-fed. And that's what the Rambam came up with. About 850 years ago, my Rambam wrote his Mishnah Torah to say, here, these are these laws, and here are all decisions, these are these laws. And really anything you wanted to know about Judaism, the Rambam has set it down as the halacha, as the Jewish law. Now, we're going to zoom in, so to speak. Obviously, you can't learn everything in one show, but we're going to zoom in on one specific chapter of the literally over 900 chapters of the Rambam and all his works. And it's going to be actually the final chapter. Why do I start with the final chapter? Well, because the final chapter is a little bit more interesting for us, relevant now, because it deals, it's called Rambam's Hilchos Malachim, the laws of kings. These are the absolute last laws that the Rambam picks on and chooses. But what he wants to say, according to this Rambam, is just that he's going to describe halachically, meaning according to Jewish law, not poetically, not allegorically, but actually as the Jewish law, not historically again, as what are the laws of the Messianic era. So of course that I'm sure is very interesting to us nowadays, as the Lubavitcher Rebbe points out that we are very close to the Messianic era, and therefore we should know what's going to happen. So a little bit of a peek into what the Jewish laws, the way about going things is, we will learn them here. Now what I'm going to learn is there's many volumes of the Rambam, and there's different translations. I have a Hebrew text in front of me, which I will not bear with you with the Hebrew, so therefore I will only give you over the English. I'll free translate as I go. But what I do have is interesting commentaries, as from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, as I just said before. The Lubavitcher Rebbe has talked about many times about speaking about and learning about and feeling about the Messianic era coming up. And he has many thoughts, and he has taken out these thoughts not in a general sense, but little by little about on everything from the Rambam as the code says. So I will translate the text, and then I will constantly peek back into what what we'll just call the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the teacher, the Rebbe, has said about these ideas. So here it goes. This is chapter 12. This is absolutely the last chapter, and we said over 900 chapters of the Rambam's book, Mishnah Torah, or the Laws of Kings. Do not think that the days of the Mashiach, the world will be nullified from what is changed from normality, or that there's going to be some newness in creation. Only the world will function as the normal way. So this is actually bigger news according to the Rambam, and I'll bring it out here and just teach you just the regular text, because the Messianic era, many times it's said that there is going to be great changes in the world. Here the Rambam says clearly right up front that the world will be a normal world. The Rambam implies a question from Isaiah, which is very oft-quoted. It says that the wolf will live with the sheep, and the leopard with the the little goat. Doesn't that sound a little abnormal? That's not normal now. You don't put a little goat in a wild zoo. I think it would be eaten up fairly fast. They don't get along with each other. So that sounds like the world is going to be changed. It's going to be a different kind of world. But the Rambam answers that idea and says that this is just an example, that this is just for an idea of an allegorical sense. What it means is that the Jewish people, which are like a sheep, and everybody's picking on them, everybody's looking for them, so that it says in the Medrash that the Jewish people are like one sheep among 70 wolves. And the sheep, like the Jewish people, will get along with its neighbors. The Jewish people have been subject to persecution for thousands upon thousands of years. Every generation, there's been some new persecution. Generation ago was the Nazis and the communists, which have been fallen, have taken their toll on the Jewish people. Talk about it recently, the 500 years ago, the Spanish Inquisition throughout the Jewish people. So the Jewish people are not any stranger to persecution. And every generation it seems like someone's picking on the Jewish people. Well, one of the news of the Messianic era, according to Rambam's interpretation of Isaiah, is that the sheep, the little sheep, the Jewish people will get along with its neighbors, and there won't be any antagonism there. Now he says that everybody will return to the true faith, and their people will not be stealing and not be destroying. We once talked about it on a show, that one of the greatest laws, even for now, Messianic era aside, is there is the 7 laws of B'nai Noach, the Noahite people, which are mankind. And one of those laws is not to steal. And really, if you would think about it, and if people would just follow the law, people would do what the Torah expects them to do, then really, in a certain sense, it would be a utopian area. People wouldn't kill. Think about that. There wouldn't be no stealing. Well, the crime in the street, for the most part, is really killing and stealing. It'd be safe to walk the streets. That would be, in a certain sense, a whole new world, which, on the other hand, wouldn't be a different world. There would be the same streets and the same people, but if people would just learn to go according to the Torah law, right away there would be crime in the street, be removed. And this is what the Rambam's saying also. People will, I don't want to say it's a utopian idea, but it seems saying, I don't know how fast crime is going away from us. I don't know if we can maybe achieve it by ourselves, maybe theoretically. And I don't want to say only theoretically. That's why I don't want to get into that idea. Can we have a good life? Yes. People can live for themselves a good life now, and people can find peace with themselves and their neighbors. Is everybody going to do it? I don't know if everybody can do it. So therefore, one of the ideas behind this is to talk about is just that we're going to see when the Messiah comes, Messianic era, well, that all people in the world, they won't be stealing, they won't harm everybody. Well, in a certain sense, that's a utopian world right there. Now, it says in the Tez of the Mashiach further on, that we're going on further, that all these ideas from, and I know many people quote it and people know it about Isaiah, but it's still an idea that these are all, according to Rambam, as an example. Now, of course, I have to contrast this idea with, as I did say at the beginning, of course, it's true, Rambam was a major codifier of Jewish law, but on the other hand, there are different Jewish sages that disagreed with the Rambam. It's not the bottom line also, everything that the Rambam says, and many people disagree, and they say no, that what it says in the book of Isaiah, for example, is something supernatural, and it has to be taken literally. So how do we contrast the two ideas together? And maybe both could be right also, because we don't want to look for arguments. Mainly when we see different opinions in the Talmud, the best idea to approach it is to see, just like we see maybe in a rainbow, we see a blue and a red and different colors. Say, well, I say it's blue and I say it's red, and we have different opinions what color the rainbow is, and maybe if we can just put it all together and see, hey, it's really white, it's just like a prism that has white, clear light, and it's just diffracted, and really, maybe everybody's right. If we can just put it together, we can see that everything comes from the same source. And there's the same idea when we're going to approach this problem also. We have two different views, whether the Messianic era will be supernatural, just normal. And we can put the two together in the different stages of the Messianic era. The first era will be when it'll be normal, and everything will go the way of the world. And the second stage will be the supernatural stage. And for example, that the Jewish people are promised that there will be Techiyas Mason, revival of the dead. That eventually everybody that is died will come alive again. We'll talk about it soon, and maybe we won't have a chance for it right now, but of course it deserves a lot of explanation. We have billions of people in the world, and I know a lot of people ask me when I say things, how is it going to be? Stay tuned, as I say, because we have other things to talk about, but we will get that subject either today or another time where we will touch upon that idea of the revival of the dead. It's a very interesting idea. Now, the second idea the Rambam says, according to the Rebbe's interpretation, it says that it's a Gemara quote from the Talmud, that there's no difference between this world and the days of the Mashiach in the Messianic era, only the servitude of the kingdoms. It's the only thing that's really in there, the difference between them is. Meaning that there's going to be, the Jewish people won't be under the yoke of their masters. I know people ask, they say that people, listen, Israel is an independent state now. What are we looking forward to? Are you saying there's independence now? What's the difference? It's a little bit of a difference, and maybe even a lot of difference if you look at it. Yes, Israel has its own flag, and yes, that they speak Hebrew and English, and Hebrew and not English or Arabic or whatever have you. It's their national tongue is Hebrew, the Jewish language. But remember this over here, that nowadays, we can't get into the whole political ideas now, that there are nations that have, in a certain sense, political independence, but really an economic independence that they don't have. And they, so to speak, have to conform to the standards of the other nations. So in a certain sense, Israel doesn't have total independence in that sense, and we're looking for that independence that they can do what they want to do, only with the coming of the Mashiach, which is the Hebrew word for the Messiah. Now, this is a very interesting idea many people talk about also, and that's why I want to tune you up and try to figure out exactly what was happening. People throw out these ideas and just don't have a clear view of what's happening. So at the beginning of the days of the Mashiach, there's going to be a war of Gog and Magog. Now, who are this Gog and Magog? It says in the prophet also, many people know about it, and what kind of terrible war and calamity is about to set in if we say that the Messianic era is just about to come, and we just learned over here, black and white, that there's going to be a terrible war of Gog and Magog. Who knows what that means? Some terrible calamity, a nuclear war, God forbid, is supposed to happen to us. Well, there's many interpretations, and that's what you need the sages for, and that's what you need me for, just to explain things and fine-tune these ideas for, because many of these ideas come with different explanations. And the interpretation, therefore, is follows. I just want to quote you what other sages first say, that there were terrible wars, and we once talked upon it, but probably don't remember. It's in 1648, 1649, and you're talking about 350 years ago practically already. There were terrible riots, and they were more like wars, the Chelminsky riots throughout Central Europe. Now, these riots, which really decimated Jewish communities, and was a terrible scene. Like I say, we can't get into all the details right now. That's not the point. But one of the rabbis at about 1800 said the wars of Gog and Magog really was that war. Was the war in 1648 and 1649. Well, obviously there's been other wars throughout history since then. In our century, if you want to see terrible wars, we have World War I and surely World War II, when millions upon millions upon millions of people died. So we can actually say, according to these sages, that we fulfilled our obligation, if you want to use those words, of the wars of Gog and Magog with these terrible wars that have been with us for the last hundreds of years. So in that sense, maybe we don't have to worry about. On the other hand, we don't want to even talk about it, whether philosophically there could be a different war and another war. It wouldn't be philosophically against what we're saying, that there should be a different war. The only thing is we can hope and say, again, as I said before, the Lubavitch Rebbe says, we're very close to Messianic here. We've fulfilled all our obligation as preparatory notes, including this war of Gog and Magog, before the Messianic era. So ultimately, we shouldn't have any problem, really, and philosophically, at least, in accepting the Messiah when he comes. Hopefully he'll come soon and there won't be any need for any more wars. Now here's a very interesting idea according to this interpretation of the Rambam. And he says that the Rambam is not going to come to change any laws. He's not going to make, and let me just quote you from the Rambam, impure, pure, and pure to impure. He's not going to invalidate people and saying, oh, you're really no good. I have a prophecy. I really know your genealogy. I know your story behind you. Because I know even though it's a big idea now, genealogy, I don't know how many people really look up their background. And it could be people that have bad genealogy, think they're perfectly good people, and something could be wrong, and all of a sudden the Messiah, ooh, I know all your genealogy. Here it is, everything before you through prophecy, hundreds of years back. Your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was this, that, or the other thing. So don't worry about that. No one's going to take out old skeletons out of the closet for you. So that's not what his business is, to invalidate or people who are good, and not to make people who are good that's invalidating. Oh, I really know you're all right. That's not. His major idea, and listen to the words that Rambam quote, are to make peace in the world. And does say in the Gemara, and it's very interesting that you can have all the blessings in the world. You can have money, and you can have children, which is a very big blessing also, whether people believe it or not in today's society. But children are a blessing. And you can have everything, but if you don't have peace, you have nothing. So the biggest blessing that a person can have, or a community or a country can have, or the world at large, really is peace. And that's exactly what he's saying here. There's going to be peace. That really is ultimately what's important. And of course, there's world peace, and in America it's important, but I don't know if people worried about it to such an extent, because there really hasn't been wars in American territory, and maybe if they're worried about nuclear war, that's also doesn't seem like, thank God, into the foreseeable future. It doesn't look like the threat is right at our doorstep. But of course, there's actually different kind of peace. There's peace being with machine guns and artillery. And it says, he quotes you, V'heshiv levavos al abanim, and he's going to make peace for fathers to their children. And isn't that a big piece that I think is in America? Again, I don't have figures and I don't have the research, but from my dealings with people as a clergyman, as a rabbi, and counseling people, that is really a big need of peace. Maybe we're not worried about anybody throwing an artillery shell around here, and maybe we're not really scared about anything that, about military affairs, but there's inner peace, as we talk about it many times, where there's peace in family relationships. And that's an important kind of peace also, and that's what the Rambam is going to do also. They quote us that there's peace in the world, but there's peace inwardly also, and that's what the Messiah is supposed to do also. Now, Rambam says there are opinions amongst our sages that Elijah the prophet is supposed to show up, and he's going to hearken and herald the coming of the Messianic age. And this is very important for us to understand, that there's tradition and legends among Jewish people. Elijah lived about 2,500 years ago, we should say, the times of the prophets. And if people know the Bible stories, that Elijah was whisked away, he didn't die a normal death, whisked away in heaven. The legend has it amongst Jewish people is that Elijah is there to come and help the Jewish people. Come spiritually at every circumcision to witness the circumcision of baby boys, that they're circumcised on the 8th day. But sometimes he comes as a human being to help out the Jewish people whenever they need it. And this Elijah the prophet is supposed to come and herald the coming of the Messiah. Now, maybe we're not giving exact dates, and maybe we're not explaining it fully, but that's exactly what the Rambam says too. That all these things, quote, or and similar like this, no person really knows what's happening. This is quote, these are hidden things by the prophets. Now the prophets did tell us, and we quoted ourselves, the book of Isaiah, there's going to be the sheep with the goat lying, with the wolf lying down, and we did, and people know these quotes themselves. But the prophets didn't see clearly, give a clear picture of what's happening. We can only just have like get these perimeters and an outline of what's happening. Maybe we can fill in the ideas ourselves. Maybe we can have that much of an intuition and try to feel what's going to happen, and that's important also. But truly a clear picture, it's very hard for us to understand. And even our sages who really codified many of our laws in the Talmud, as we said, and described things, they really didn't have a clear picture either. Only we have to look at the psukim, the sentences in the Torah, which many times, if you've ever gone through it, and we say ourselves, is a little bit in an ambiguous sense. They're not clearly stated. Therefore, that's where you get arguments. Someone throws out an ambiguous statement, not a clear-cut statement, and then you ask people in a room, hey, could you interpret what this means to you? Well, I think you're just going to get about everybody's a different opinion. You're never going to get a clear 100% consensus of what that interpretation is. And really, this is, I don't want to use the problem, but this is really where the ideas are behind the Torah, that there's so much discussion on it. They're a little bit loose. They are vague, and therefore you have different interpretations of them all. Bottom line, the Rambam says, is just that all these things are not really arranged for us to clear as a bell, and they're not exact. And the Rambam says another thing, that he says a person should engage himself with these agadas, or the allegorical senses of the Talmud. It's very difficult to understand that if we tell you what's right and what's wrong in a law, stand up here, sit down there during the prayers, or whatever have you, then we could say clearly, this is the law. One guy says, you owe me $100. Another guy says, I don't owe you $100. Well, what's the bottom line decision? We can deal with that. But these ideas of the agadas, the allegorical sense of the Talmud, is just very interesting. It says you can't really engage in them well. Then we can tune that up also to present day, where since it's so imminent the coming of the Messiah, maybe we should really think about them further, as the Rebbe says, and really try to delve as much as we can for it. It's really not a contradiction to the Rambam says, because he says don't deal with it, because maybe at that time it wasn't good, we don't have a clear picture. But now really in recent age, we really are getting a clear picture of what means peace in our time. Where was the world so far away from world war as there is today, with the decimation of the Soviet Union? When was there such an overpowering amount of knowledge? We can say in the last century, of course, but it just keeps on growing and growing. Last, 20 years that man has been on the moon, and the computer burst that's on the scene, and we see the great amount of knowledge that's in the world today. So a little bit, as we're getting closer, we really can see that closing in on the times of the Messiah. And again, he says, don't look at him closely, but again, that's why I say, according to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, as he interprets, that we're so close that maybe we should talk about it. That's exactly what we're talking about now. Since these things have to be, and people are begging to understand what's happening in the world, they don't understand such catastrophic changes in the world, that it just begs to be understood and begs to be dealt with and needs explanation. And well, that's what we're here for, to explain to people exactly what's the Judaism has to say, and that we can focus the world into it also. And it's a very interesting idea to prove our point. The Rambam just says, and there's an interesting time over here. Now there's a specific time that the Messiah is supposed to come. But on the other hand, that we could hurry it up that time before the end. Well, it's not such a weird idea, because, well, let's look at the time of going out of Egypt. It's a contradiction in sentences. It says, on one hand, the Jewish people were supposed to be in Egypt for 400 years. And on the other hand, it says they were actually only in there for 210 years. Well, if they were promised for 400 years, what happened? Why isn't there the 400 years? And the answer is over there, that is, when talking about the exodus from Egypt, is that the Jewish people were put into such hard servitude that, so to speak, it was like they were doing double time. That the 210 years is as if it was like the 400 years, and therefore they were liberated before their time. So it's the same idea what we're talking about with the Mashiach, the Messiah also, that really there is a set time, but if we work hard and we plead hard, we can hurry up, hasten that time before its end. Now, what is that end time period is my next question. And to that, the Rambam answers you, don't think about it. It's just going to get you depressed. So if it's obviously in the Rambam's time, since he hasn't come, it's surely 800 years from thence. So therefore, it was a long time. And you shouldn't think about, because let's if I say, I say next month the Mashiach is going to come. Well, the month comes and goes, and I think if I really feel that something's going to happen, that's just going to lead you to being downcast and a little bit depressed. So we can understand the idea of the Rambam, that why you shouldn't think about the end time periods, because there are certain times that are good. It's not just one time period. There's certain times throughout history where there's end time periods. But number two, we do see sages that actually gave us times for when the Mashiach should come, the Messiah should come. How could they do it? It's clearly against what the Rambam says. And the answer that they give to this contradiction is, and it's really using the same answer for our business, as soon as people are going to forget about the Messiah, it's a good idea to invigorate people, to enliven, and to bring that hope of people in order that they should feel and that they should sense that the end of the Messiah is coming near. And that's the reason why that we actually have this idea that I don't know when, don't expect me to give you a date because I can't tell you. But all I can say is we can lead from the Rebbe, who is surely smarter than I am and most people, and that he says that the end is near. So we're just going to hope, which is something what the Rambam says also is the best thing for us to do, is to hope for the coming of the Messiah. Clearly, there will be soon. Just give you the depth of the Rambam. Actually, I consider that going through it very fast. I wanted to keep the tempo up. I wanted to give you a lot of information as much as I can, but we actually went through fast. What did we learn in about a half hour's time? 2 laws, about a third of a chapter of the Rambam, and there's 900 chapters of it. Just the immensity of the work, and I consider it just like reading it through. In a certain sense, I know I gave a lot of explanations, but still there's so much to delve on, there's so much to talk about. If you have questions yourself, feel free to contact me. I always try to answer anybody's questions best as my ability, but just wanted to show you the immensity of the Rambam's work. A little bit of, we focused in specifically on the Messiah, which we felt is a little bit more relevant for our times in our day. Thank you very much. Shalom. Welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Delmar Chabad Center, and today our subject is charity and hospitality. For most people it may not be new. For other peoples it may be a totally foreign idea. Something that charity has become part of the Jewish tradition for thousands of years, and it was taught over from one generation to the other. a little bit. It's been through the 70s, the 80s, and of course we're in the 90s. We've gone in through the me generation. Charity, in a certain sense, has gone by the wayside. People have always thought, oh, I got to get myself a better status and level of living, and all right, maybe a little bit I'll help somebody else out. Maybe if a panhandler comes, I'll give him a few dollars. But in a real meaningful sense of charity, it's not there. And number two, hospitality also, maybe because of the culture we live in. Someone comes into town, they don't need to knock on your door and say, hey, do you have a bed or an extra meal for me? There's restaurants around. There's always a motel or a hotel to be had. No one has to walk into town and feel that they need a special hospitality. So mainly because of our culture, a little bit because of the educational system doesn't push at charity as much as maybe they should. Well, of course, that's what we're here for, is to educate, but we educate with a special sweet way, sugar-coated way, which is with stories. Now, and many times we talked about it before, stories are not fairy tales in Judaism, that they carry a very high level of a moral. Stories are not just for children, stories are for adults. And actually, I just want to bring out to you, stories are a major Jewish tradition of learning. And many people today would say, oh, stories, stories, kid stuff. It's not that way in Judaism. Stories have a tremendous amount of ability to convey a message that really lecturing just wouldn't have. If I'd sit here and lecture, you'd feel, oh, the man is lecturing to me, the rabbi's telling me a sermon. I don't want to hear it. So when we tell stories, everybody loves stories. But that doesn't mean necessarily that they're babyish. And certainly not with Torah stories. Well, here's an interesting story. And I want you to be all excited in preparation to hear this story, because it really is a beautiful story. And this is a story, just a little introduction. For people who know, then it's obvious. But for a Jewish person that passes away, that the relative says Kaddish. Kaddish is really not a mourner's prayer. It's just really how great the Almighty is. And just installs the feeling of awe and respect in the Almighty, even though, of course, that person just went through a tremendous loss of a loved one. Nevertheless, this Kaddish prayer that the relative in the world is saying helps the person in the next world, the departed soul, raise higher and higher. So it's a very important thing for a person to hear the Kaddish. Young Shmuel was a total stranger in this far-off town. True, he had been accepted as a student in its yeshiva, but he preferred to subsist on lean rations of bread and water rather than follow the current custom of eating his meals by roster at the home of a different householder every day of the week. This is long ago. Nowadays, of course, just to put a little bit of an parentheses into this idea nowadays, that again, modern ideas, we have the dormitories in the schools, and they do eat good lunches, but in dinners. But in those days they didn't have, and you'd go around from one family to another to eat your dinner. A few days after his arrival, while he was on his way late at night to buy the loaf of bread, which would last him for several meals, an old woman turned to him with an urgent request. Believe me, young man, I'm not accustomed to asking for donations, but my son is in terrible trouble. He's been arrested for theft. He's utterly innocent, of course, but now I've got to raise enough money somehow to free him from prison. I beg of you, perhaps you would like to have a share in the mitzvah, the nice deed of ransoming captives to the best of your ability. The young man immediately put his hand into his pocket in order to give her his last few copper coins, apologizing meanwhile that was all he had to give. I'm sorry, young man, she said. I see that you are a poor yeshiva rabbinical student who could do with a little support yourself. With these words she offered him a silver coin. He refused to accept, insisting instead that she take his few copper coins in his participation in the fund for Pidyon Shavuim, the redemption of captives. The woman persisted. There's not a donation that I'm giving you. It's payment for reciting Kaddish. You see, this evening is the anniversary of my husband's passing, and my son won't be able to say Kaddish on his father's yahrzeit for the elevation of his soul. So I would like you to say Kaddish for my late husband, as well as for all the other folk of this town whose yahrzeit falls this evening. That way the silver coin will be honestly earned, and at the same time you'll have earned a rich mitzvah. Under these conditions, Shmuel now agreed, provided that she would take his copper coins at his share in the mitzvah for which she was collecting. Both satisfied, they parted company. The young man went straight to the local base medrash, a synagogue, and after the evening prayer, said Kaddish as he had promised to, and moreover studied some Mishnayos, some of the part of the Talmud, for the benefit of the souls of the departed. From there he proceeded to the baker's as intended. On the way there, however, he met a dignified elderly gentleman with a long white beard who turned to him with a friendly voice. "Young man," he said, "I would like to tell you how grateful I am for the Kaddish that you have recited this evening. A sweet Kaddish, straight from the heart." He handed Shmuel a crumpled note from his pocket and continued, "This is addressed to a dear friend of mine. Please hand it to him, and he will provide you with an honorable fashion with everything you need. And by the way, lots of success in your studies." But before the surprised young man could manage to thank him, the kindly old man had disappeared into the night. Having finally bought his bread, Shmuel returned to his yeshiva and opened the pretentious note. His elation soon withered. For when he had first arrived at this town, he had been directed to the home of some leading citizen who was to have arranged him regular meals at one fixed address. Instead, this Parnes, leader of the community, had proposed that he do the rounds of half a different householders, and they had sent him unceremoniously on his way. And thus, this was the man whose name was written on the old man's note. Since there seemed to be little alternative, Shmuel decided to visit him the next day anyway. After one glimpse at the note, the gruff stranger asked in a voice that trembled, "But who gave you this note?" The young man explained how the night before he had met a dignified elderly gentleman who had thanked him for a Kaddish he had said, and had then handed him this note. It was the word Kaddish that electrified the stranger. Shaking from head to foot, he asked, "For whom did you say the Kaddish?" Shmuel now told of his encounter with the old woman whose son was unable to say Kaddish after her husband, and how she had therefore paid him to do so. The stranger seized his head in his hands and walked up and down his room like one possessed. Spinning around suddenly to face Shmuel, he asked him intently, "Did you get a good look at the old man's face?" "Such a dignified countenance I'll never forget," he said. "Here, follow me," said the stranger, and led him into a nearby room where a number of portraits hung on the walls. "Do you recognize the man you met among these?" "Of course," said Shmuel, pointing out one of the portraits. "This is the man who spoke to me last night." The stranger collapsed into a chair and broke down in bitter tears. After quite some time, while Shmuel stood in silence, waiting for him to regain his composure, he turned to Shmuel in a voice and began to explain himself. "My dear friend, the old man who spoke to you is no other than my late father. He passed away 10 years ago. When you handed me this note, I recognized his handwriting at once. My first thought was that you had forged it, and that I had a swindler standing here before me. But then I recalled that since you were a total stranger in this town, you could never know my late father. Then when you said that word, Kaddish, I recalled that today is the anniversary of his passing, and I had forgotten it completely. Woe is me! Look how deep I have sunk in the vanities of the world, if I have forgotten the yahrzeit of my own late father." He paused a moment to collect his thoughts, and then thanked his young visitor for having said the Kaddish that he should have recited. Before they parted company, he handed him the amount that was written on the note, undertook to support him throughout his stay in the town, and asked him as well to provide him with a list of needy yeshiva students so that he could see to their needs too. And from that day on, he became a different man, open-handed and generous. But though he was charitable in many ways, his favorite mitzvahs always remained the ransoming of captives. For was that not the mitzvah that had first connected the young man with his mother, the good deed through which he himself had now become a new man? Well, it's an amazing but true story. And there's many stories like that. I almost had one personally. People will know that there's a famous play called The Dybbuk, and I actually went to the theater and went to see it, and truth to tell, didn't agree with everything that it was portraying. Not to get into that story right now, but the director who we were talking to, and this is in Joe Paff's theater in in New York City, the late Joe Paff, because he passed away recently, and the director there justified herself with the play and saying, that on the play, I don't want to get into the whole idea about the Dybbuk here, but there is a Kaddish said for a departed one on the stage, and he said that someone came over to her and that says, I really feel, of course, through the drama of theater, how important it is for a soul in the departed world, in the next world, to have a Kaddish said after them. I'm surely going to be sure that someone's going to say Kaddish after me. So it really is an important idea to say Kaddish after somebody, and that is departed, and it's a benefit for themselves, and of course for the person and in the next world. Now, here's another story about some people that turn away and not doing the right things and have to be a little bit nudged, a little bit coerced into doing the right thing. So this is the story of the power of a humble penny. You only had to mention his nickname, the Miser, and everyone in Berdichev knew exactly whom you meant. For there was only one man in town, Rachmiel by name, whom no poor man would dare to visit. Everyone already knew from bitter experience that he had learned to block his ears to the outcry of the needy. From time to time, when the annual appeal for the community chest was conducted in town, there would be some daring individual who would try to find his way to his heart, but to no avail. In fact, he even added distinctive style to his refusal. Whenever approached for funds, he would offer a rusty old copper coin, and when admonished for his conduct, he would chuckle. Well, you're certainly not going to get any more than that out of me, he would say, and would turn the miserable coin to his wallet. So it was that as the years went by, people stopped visiting his home altogether, and he remained utterly isolated. One day, the town was visited by no less than a personage than Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, the author of Tanya. He had come in order to raise funds for the ransom of captive, and his overjoyed followers in Berdichev arranged a festive welcome in his honor. The tzaddik, the righteous man, Reb Shneur Zalman, was no longer a young man, yet he had somehow mustered the strength to come. For, as he said to his chassidim, one can hardly let a mitzvah like this pass by neglected. He addressed his gathering on the obligation of each individual to participate in the all-important mitzvah, and the response was open-hearted, worthy indeed of Berdichev. But when he set out on the next stage of his appeal, calling on individual townsmen, while accompanied by the local dignitaries, they all urged him to avoid a certain proud mansion that they now reached. Why should they allow the Alter Rebbe to undergo needless humiliation? The guest stood still, however, and asked them that why they were not conducting him to this particular house. Without hesitation, they answered in a chorus, "Him? He's an impossible miser. His hands are locked tight. A heart of stone, no one ever comes here. He's only got one rusty copper coin to offer. And whenever a collector declines to accept it, he just puts it back in his purse." Having heard them out, he turned to the heavy iron gate. "Please come with me," he said to his companions. "This man is a Jew after all, and he is obliged to fulfill the mitzvah tzedakah, just like every one of us." Opening the door to such a distinguished delegation, Rachmiel seated them all around his table and waited for the Alter Rebbe, it was called Reb Shneur Zalman Liadi, to speak. The tzaddik came straight to the point. We have come here in order to ask for your contribution to the ransom of captives. True to ingrained habit, Yerachmiel opened the door of his cabin and took out his old leather wallet. The dignitaries of the community felt decidedly uneasy, but perhaps just this time the hardened old miser would at least feel shame in the presence of the tzaddik, and would wrench himself from his hard-hearted custom. But it was not to be. He took out that disgusting old familiar coin, held it out to the Rebbe, and in a dry voice repeated the usual insulting formula. This is what I'm giving. If you like it, take it. If not, I will put it right back into my wallet. The experienced communal collectors were sure that the tzaddik would refuse to accept it. Instead, however, he put it in his own wallet and calmly said to his treasurer, "Now please record the amount that I received from Rabbi Yerachmiel." The visit was over and he turned towards the door, but something strange happened. Yerachmiel remained standing transfixed and his eyes streamed with tears. Then, shaking violently like a man seeking to free himself from the clutches of a dreaded nightmare, he cried out to his guest, "Rebbe, I didn't show you the respect that I ought to have shown. Please, I beg you, take a seat once more at my table, and I will offer you refreshments in a fitting manner." He sprang to life. Within minutes he had covered the table with a sparkling white tablecloth and delicacies and choice beverages. His townsmen were amazed. Was this a dream? Had this man in fact changed his colors within the space of 1 minute? But the sudden exuberance of their host swept them off their feet. "Drink, my brothers. Please say l'chaim with me. Join me in my simcha, because I have been privileged today to be visited in my home by the distinguished tzaddik." In no time they were all toasting the Rebbe and their host, and as they clapped their hands and sang together, the rollicking sounds of their joy bounced through the window into the street. Passers-by paused a moment out of curiosity, and soon found themselves invited inside and whirled into the rhythm of the dancing throng. More tables were brought in, and within a short time half the town was jostling happily for a little corner in the spacious reception room of the local miser. The Alter Rebbe indicated that he had something to say, and with a moment the entire jovial crowd fell into a hushed silence. "My beloved brothers," he began, "today we have all learned a lesson that can help us in our service of the Creator and in our ongoing battle with the evil inclination. For he bothers us constantly with his attempts to dislodge us from our rightful place in this world and to disinherit us from the share in the world to come. And to each individual he comes in a different guise. Now all these years he has succeeded in taking hold of Yerachmiel, not allowing him to give tzedakah, charity. Why? Because he never managed to give charity even once. That same rusty copper coin held him back, a veritable Satan in his path, because it never left his possession. In this case, then, our friend was held captive in the hold of Satan, only because there was no one willing to relieve him of his coin. Since, however, his coin had now been taken from him, his heart had been opened, and the obstacle has been removed from his path. And since one mitzvah begets another, his heart is now ready and prepared to warm to anything in the cause of holiness. L'chaim, my friend." As for Yerachmiel, he again took out his wallet and counted out into the Rebbe's hand no less than 2,000 rubles. And from that day on, every hungry and threadbare caller in town knew where he could depend on a welcoming smile, a luscious meal, and a generous donation. The Alter Rebbe had caused an eloquent lesson, for there is no Jew so incorrigible that he should be turned away. Rather, one should take him warmly to one's heart and raise his better spirits. So we see that we have to talk to everybody and deal with everybody and accept everybody for what they are, and ultimately the good that they have will be accepted and will prosper if we'll just give everybody that wants to do good a little bit of a chance. Now, I wanted to read a little story about hospitality, even though a little bit we talked about hospitality. But here's a beautiful, beautiful story, and it's called "The Power of a Sigh." With nightfall, the mists of winter had settled over Mezhbush, city in Central Europe. Shabbos had departed. Havdalah, the ceremony that separates Shabbos and the weekdays, had been said, and the Baal Shem Tov asked his wagon driver to harness the horses. Before long, the holy man and his disciples were seated in the wagon and had begun their journey. As usual, he told the driver to let the reins hang loose and to allow the horses to gallop in whatever direction they chose. Suddenly they began to speed wildly ahead. The valleys turned into plains and the hills ceased to exist. In no time they had swallowed up vast distances. The merciless cold bit into the lean bodies of his disciples, but they kept their pain to themselves. Though they themselves did not know the reason for this strange journey, they knew that they were accompanying their Rebbe for some lofty purpose. The wagon finally came to a halt near a wretched little cottage in some remote village, where the haggard householder asked them to enter. He told them that a long time had passed since he had last had the opportunity of fulfilling the mitzvah of hospitality. Since the bitter winter had set and no stranger had passed through his village, this was therefore a very happy day for him. The Baal Shem Tov asked him to prepare tea and hot milk for his disciples, and their host did so joyfully. When they had all eaten and drunk and rested from the arduous journey, the host introduced himself as Moshe and asked them, "From where do my brothers come?" "From Mezhbush," they said. "Oh, so you know the great tzaddik who lives in your town, Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov," he asked. At this point, the Baal Shem Tov asked their host not to burden his disciples with further questions. It was late, and it would be preferable to prepare beds so that they could rest. For 5 whole days, the little party stayed in their cottage. Their host exerted himself to the point of self-sacrifice to see it to that they should lack neither food nor drink, giving away even the meager rations that they were set aside for his own family. And with all that, he and his wife were animated by the joy of the mitzvah, for had heaven not granted them the opportunity of extending hospitality to strangers? When they decided to return to their hometown, he showed them the customary courtesy of accompanying them beyond the outskirts of the village. "Just one favor," he said to them as they parted. "When you arrive at Mezhbush, could you please mention my name to the great tzaddik, Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov? I would like to have his blessing. That heaven grant that I be a faithful and God-fearing Jew." "My friend," said the Baal Shem Tov, "I am the man whom you seek, and there will yet come a time when you will understand why we came to your home." When Moshe came home, he found his children hungry and crying. Not only was there no food left, but in order to provide for their guests, he and his wife had even sold some of their humble belongings. Seeing the tears of his helpless children and the anguish of his noble wife, Moshe suddenly uttered a bitter cry. "Master of the universe," he explained, "why should the children have to undergo the pangs of hunger? Why are they guilty?" He remained silent for a moment, as if awaiting an answer, and a stranger knocked at the door. Moshe opened it, and Ivan, an aged Gentile neighbor, walked in. From time to time he would drop in just to enjoy a touch of vodka with his friendly host. Moshe wanted to tell him at once that there was nothing whatever in the house that he could offer him. But Ivan spoke first. "This time I've come for something very important," he said, "even more important than our usual little drop of vodka." The burly peasant suddenly grew serious. "Moshki," said in a hoarse whisper, I've got a secret to tell you. You know that I'm old and weak and sick. You know, too, that I live with my daughter and son-in-law and that I don't get along with them. So listen now to what I want to suggest. I'll come and live in your house. I don't need much, but in exchange for your hospitality, you'll be well rewarded, very well rewarded. You see, Moishka, I've got a treasure hidden away. Tens of thousands of golden coins all hidden away. You can go there right now and take as much as if you want. When the time comes, Moshka, that whole treasure will be yours. Yours alone." Reading from Moshe's face that he was not only stupefied, but doubtful as well, Ivan took him by the hand and with heavy steps led him through the thick forest that loomed over the cottages at the edge of the village. He stopped at the foot of a mighty tree and after digging for a few moments hauled out a leather sack full of gold coins. "Here," he panted, "give us a hand and we'll take it off all to your home. And no one, of course, has to know about our little find." From that day on, no one in Moshe's house was ever hungry. Day after day, they rejoiced in the miracle that had transformed their lives, and in due course, needy people from all around had reason to find out that Moshe was now a rich man and that his door was always open. The aged peasant lived in Moshe's house for only a few weeks. Then one day, while on a visit to the home of his daughter, he died suddenly. The treasure was now the property of Moshe, who continued to put it to good use. One day he recalled the visit of the Baal Shem Tov in his house and decided that the time had come for him to visit the tzaddik and to bask in the holy light that he radiated. When he arrived at Mezbah, the Baal Shem Tov greeted him warmly and asked after his family. The disciples were surprised at the unusual cordial welcome that they continued to observe. And when he noticed that the Baal Shem Tov said, "Don't you remember this man? We once visited him together and stayed in his house for 5 days. In fact, while we were there, we ate the last slice of bread in his house. Here, let me tell you why we paid him that visit. It had been decreed in heaven that this man should be granted great wealth by virtue of the mitzvah of hospitality they used to fulfill so beautifully. The trouble was that he was always satisfied with the little he had, and never once did he pray for his livelihood. There was thus a danger that this blessing would never be realized and would never reach him, that he would lose the treasure that had been destined for him and remain forever poor. But when we stayed in his house for 5 whole days and left nothing there, so that his children cried and asked him for bread, then he sighed from the depths of his heart and asked the Creator to provide for him. It was at that moment that the blessing came to rest upon him. Hashem sent along an aged Gentile with a hidden treasure, and Moshe became a rich man. The Chassidim listened in amazement. "Just see," they whispered to each other, "how mighty is the power of a sigh that breaks forth from the heart of a pure Jew." Well, we've always have more stories to tell, and maybe next time we'll tell even more stories, because I love listening to the stories, and I've heard them so many times, and I'm sure that I'm confident that you also enjoy the stories for children and adults alike. But like I say, they're not just stories sometimes to amuse, like that interesting story with the old man that came from the netherworld, but also that stories that teach us a beautiful moral lesson about giving charity and taking in guests. And we also have to remember, maybe if it's just on a selfish level, but we'll accept that also, it's really the more you give is the more you get back. Ultimately, you'll get back whatever you give in charity, and it'll be for a good purpose, and it'll be a right purpose, and you'll see that in good things, when you give out, this is what you get 10 times as much in the goodness that comes for you, either through more money in some indirect way, or through in some good way, and through health and life, which is also very important. It's more priceless, more than money, of course. But same with that, all that, these stories convey a beautiful idea that a person can do good and be moral and ethical, and ultimately it's the best thing for him. Surely it's the best thing for the world at large, and together that the world becomes a better place, and hopefully for the Messiah should come soon in our days. Thank you very much. Shalom. Welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon, and with the Dalmar Chabad Center, we have two very important guests with us. Two students from the Bethlehem High School, and these are two Joshes, Josh Zalen and Josh from Bethlehem. You're coming to be seniors in the Bethlehem High School. They have joined us on our show because they're two interested Jewish students that have questions. And of course, like we always say, it says in the Ethics of the Fathers, if you don't ask, you don't learn. We always welcome many questions, so we welcome the two Joshes from Bethlehem to the Jewish View.
Okay, we have questions that have been composed by ourselves and some of our fellow students at Bethlehem High School. And Josh has our first question.
All right, we were wondering what you thought of the whole Crown Heights incident from last year and how it affects Jews in Delmar.
Well, it's an interesting situation, very briefly. On one hand, I'll tell you personally, because I did live in Crown Heights, so it's almost even a personal question. I mean, it's been a number of years ago, but I know the situation pretty much firsthand. I have a lot of friends there. One hand, I say it's very unfortunate in one sense, which the media has never picked up on, is that here you have a Jewish community living with the black community. Now, it's one thing to say, well, and I think every person across the board, I mean, I don't know about that there's some Ku Klux Klan that they can't stand the blacks, but I can talk on behalf of the Hasidim in Crown Heights that no one wants to see ill will amongst the black. And on the contrary, that's what I'm saying. They're, I think, doing the best favor to integrate. And it's one thing to say, you know, to live in a suburb and saying, oh, I wish the blacks the best of everything, and why can't we all live together when you live in a very isolated community? They live together. It's difficult because there is a higher crime rate than maybe surely than the suburbs. Nothing to talk about. And life in New York City is hard anyway. I mean, we saw with the Los Angeles riots, there's more tensions that you're going to have in suburbs. People are crowded together. The economic situation is difficult. And there's going to be more friction. Is there a crime? People have to have bars on the windows. This is New York City life in general. I don't think it's any particular to the Crown Heights situation. I just can speak on the behalf of the people in Crown Heights, and also, let me tell you the majority of blacks, which is the major point, that people want to live together, and they want to be friends together, and they have worked together. We're not talking theory. They have the Black-Jewish Council, the Economic Council, have built up and trying to get government programs to work together. And I think it's mainly a few rowdies that had got together. And I think that's the same thing in, you can say, Los Angeles situation. I can't think that, you know, you can't say that the entire black community is going to go around rioting and killing people. I think it's almost prejudice to say the opposite. A great majority of people are law-abiding citizens, and there's rowdies around that they try to look for trouble. And it has to be put in place. I mean, there are two different cultures. But, you know, Jewish people have their own cultures also. They have their own synagogues. I mean, in certain senses, they don't assimilate, especially religious Jews, because they do have their own particular culture. So in this way, they try to get together, and I had actually my friends to organize basketball games between, yes, it's true, basketball games between blacks and find some common ground. No one's looking to make them Jewish, and you know, and the Jewish people cannot go to their restaurants because they keep kosher. I mean, so like I said, there's certain things that are going to separate them, but that doesn't mean they can't be friends and find common ground. And actually, the truth of the matter is that actually, after that one incident, has calmed down, has been quiet. And there really hasn't been any problems there.
Do you think, though, that the Hasidim in Crown Heights or Brooklyn, are they there because financially they can't leave, or is there a significant reason why they are still there?
That's a good question, and there is a reason. The truth of the matter is Crown Heights was a very Jewish community. This is before I lived. You're talking about the 1930s, 1940s. Talk to an old-timer that lived in New York City. They say Crown Heights was a not I'm just saying Jewish community. It was a beautiful. It was like, it was hard to get in. It was just like overpopulated. It was a richer section like Brownsville. You know about New York City. Brownsville was like a lower section, and Crown Heights was like the hoi polloi of the Jewish community. And that's when Lubavitch moved in 1940. The Rebbe was asked, and many Hasidim also thought, you know, everybody's leaving. I mean, let's leave too. And he says, we don't want to run. The Rebbe says, I'm not a chicken and I don't run away from anything. I mean, don't have surely the time for it now, but in communist Russia also, that the Rebbe didn't leave. And a lot of people left, and he was beat up. I'm talking about the previous Rebbe now, was beat up and handicapped for life. He says, we don't run away from a fight, unless it was totally impossible situation, like in Russia and like in Poland, World War II, of course, then they were forced to leave. But in America, there's room to live with people, and there's no reason to run away. You have to work together with people, and I think that they have for the most part. That's what I'm saying. If we see with the positiveness of it, and it's one of the most integrated neighborhoods in the United States, you should know, and a lot of sociologists have looked at it. At here, side by side, black community and a white community, there isn't any bigger integrated community in the United States. But, it's always like the bad apple. One incident, everybody knows about the one incident, but to look at it, hey, there's blacks and whites living together in such an integrated community, that's really the bigger news that would be said. But as we all know, the good things don't make it into the media. One person gets killed, that's headlines already.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, one question that a student asked me to say is if you think that this country will ever be ready to have a Jewish president.
Well, it's an interesting question. It's a lot of times in theory people say, I know the percentages say that they would be. I think the right person and the right politics would be the right situation. You never know. I mean, if it's right that the person, of course, isn't going to be mainly judged on his ethnicity. I mean, he's got to have his own politics, whether he's a Democrat or Republican, he's a liberal or a conservative. And we can't just say a Jewish person loses a political race that, it's anti-Semitism. You can't just label every time sometime a Jewish person doesn't get his way, it's anti-Semitic. There's other reasons. There's a lot of Jewish people in the Senate. I think the right Jewish person would be able to be voted in if he'd be the right person in the right politics in the right time. Saying all that, I have personal feelings. I don't know if I truly want a Jewish person in the arena, because sometimes, like I say, something goes wrong, and you say, listen, every president is picked on, he does something wrong here, something wrong there. So maybe sometimes it'll be highlighted that the Jewish person will be a president. There's what to talk about. Alan Dershowitz's book, Chutzpah, almost portrays the opposite. He says that we should go for whatever we want, and we shouldn't be scared of it. But I don't know, just too much of leaning. That people have to remember that people do look at Jewish people specifically as an ethnic group, and I think, like I say, I think in the right person, right time could be president. The wrong person in the wrong time could lead to even more anti-Semitism. So there always Jewish person has to be a balance.
Okay. This might sound like a very trivial question. A lot of people want to know this. Do you have to feed your pets kosher food if you kept a kosher household?
Well, that's an interesting question, but the answer is as follows. You cannot eat kosher, but you can have benefit from kosher. That's the non-kosher. I mean, you can feed your pets non-kosher food. Of course, you wouldn't want to have it lying around the house, but that wouldn't be a problem. The only benefit where a problem comes in that you cannot have is from the chametz or leavened bread during Passover. Then, of course, you cannot eat leavened bread, but you can't even have benefit from it. So that's a little bit of a problem, because a lot of this is made with meals and the grains. So then the dogs sometimes get on a better diet. They say they get meat and scraps, and they like Passover also. But you can have benefit from non-kosher food, but you just can't eat it.
Okay. All right, let's see. Okay. What is the Orthodox viewpoint on abortion?
Well, saying, just footnoting what you're asking, Orthodox view, we'd like to say it's the Torah view. I know that there's Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox. Everybody knows that, of course. But Orthodox is what we'd like to say classic Judaism has been around for 3,300 years. And what the Torah then I'd like to say is, instead of just saying one splinter group, because it isn't a splinter group, I'd like to say it's the classic Judaism that's been around for thousands of years, that life takes precedence over everything. We all know that how great the Torah mitzvahs. We're talking about kosher and Shabbos. There's so many great mitzvahs, but we know that pekuach nefesh, life and death, overrides at all the Torah except for 3 major mitzvahs. You cannot kill somebody. If someone says, I'll kill you, unless you kill him, you take your life first. But everywhere else, Shabbos and kosher, if you're on an island, I'm dying of hunger and there's only some pig around, then you're allowed to eat the pig. That's what the Torah says. So life is more important even than the Torah mitzvahs. And this abortion is a human life. And therefore, it's a question you're talking about that life takes precedence. Of course, and I know there's the issue nowadays, it's actually a Jewish viewpoint which is different than the Catholic viewpoint. That's saying, what if unfortunately, sometimes it happens that the woman's life is in risk when she's in pregnancy. Then the answer is that the child has to go and the mother stays alive. And the reason there's a logic for this is we take a sure thing over a doubt. The mother we know is alive. The baby we don't know if he'll be stillborn or whatever have you. And therefore we take a sure thing over the life. And most people, even though it's different than the Catholic viewpoint, because the Catholic viewpoint says that the child should live, that most people, even in abortion things, has come upon the Jewish viewpoint that the child, that the mother takes first precedence over a baby.
Okay, now following up on that, the next question was, what is the viewpoint on euthanasia? But since you say that, since the Torah says that life takes precedent over everything, so does that include the machines keeping people alive?
That's a good question. It's a totally excellent question as you're asking. And that question is as follows. That I just want to footnote also and make a note that you see that sometimes the law seems harsh. I mean, you read one basic law, but if you see how it's understood in the Talmud and the law, that it becomes very humane. And here is also one idea also. We cannot give a blanket statement. Now, these machines are very important. Of course, it's a modern-day question. And the question is, the point is, you cannot do anything like positively to kill someone. You cannot actively kill somebody. But if you want to do something passively, meaning that, God forbid it happens, people are in car accidents, they say if they don't get put on a machine, they will die. So you don't have to actively, wouldn't be active, you would be not putting them on machines. You can't actively kill them, but on the other hand, you don't have to keep them being pumped up through these, breath and ventilation machines just to keep them alive. So that's a little bit more humane, and many people, of course, that's, unfortunately, it's sometimes a practical question that people ask. The people come to those situations, they ask this. But you don't have to put people on machines. But the trouble is, once they put them on machines, you cannot pull the plug. Because again, that would be actively, like through your actions, you're killing that person.
Is there a related view on autopsies? Because I had a relative who was more religious, it's like 40 years ago, and she had surgery, and then she died soon after, and it was almost definitely known that there was something, they left something in there, but they refused to have the autopsy.
Again, it's the same vein. Really, we don't want to give the blanket statement autopsies is forbidden, but generally it is, again, that a human body is very important. It's even in death that the burial rites has to show that the best consideration to a Jewish body. Saying all that, again, that's what I'm saying, tuning it up, really when it's important, and there are cases, of course, like this, we're not talking theoretically. Sometimes it says like a murder victim, they have to have the bullet inside from the person. I mean, you talk about that's one issue, of course, medical malpractice. Sometimes it is murder cases, it happens. They have to have the bullet to trace it back to the gun, and it's inside the body. So therefore, again, I don't want to give blanket statements to allow this, but it has to be gone through a rabbi, because when and where, and a lot of times they will have a rabbi there at the autopsy, because sometimes once the doctors get into the body, then they, just have a blanket statement, they just do what they want to the body. They can get in, they will, in such a situation, get into the body what's needed, and get out, because they shouldn't take all the parts away. If they don't need it, what they need it, and to get out in the situation. And
it just struck me as sort of strange not to have an autopsy.
Well, they have to ask every specific question, because you never know, because sometimes you could say, well, a disease, or sometimes it is unimportant. I mean, a lot of people want to know, I'd like to know what my relative passed away from. But listen, the bottom line is that if there's medical malpractice, one thing, but like saying heart attack or what kind of heart failure or whatever, then it becomes sometimes less important than to keep the person's body intact. Again, just It's again just pointing out the beauties of Judaism. A person is important in life and even after death. They're not just a piece of jello or something like that, or just or even an animal. I mean, just the human life and even the human person is kept in the highest regard in Judaism.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. What's the significance of a yarmulke?
Well, the yarmulke is a very interesting point over here because there's different answers for it. A few fast answers are that a Jewish person has to always remind themselves there's something above them. The yarmulke, of course, sits on top of their head, and that you're a person, and a person always, it seems in this world, becomes self-centered. They're important, their mind, what they think, what they feel, or whatever they do is the most important thing in the world. For a Jewish person, always has to remind themselves there's something above that person. There's always Hashem who's guiding them. As much as the person thinks they're in charge of their life, I'm going to make my own choices in life, I'm going to do what I want, the person always has to constantly remember that there's someone above them. And I know that it doesn't say clearly the next kind of answer because it falls off, because then you say, well, it's not a mitzvah in the Torah. It doesn't say anywhere in the Bible, in the Chumash. On the other hand, once something becomes a minhag, a custom amongst the Jewish people, it holds the force of law.
So it's more traditional. I mean,
it's traditional.
You can't wear a Chicago Bulls hat.
No. That's a good question. On the contrary, some people have Chicago Bulls yarmulkes over here, let alone a Chicago Bulls hat. I think with all the designs on them. But the law states, see, this way you have to understand the reasons. It says to have your head covered. So the yarmulke is a little cap, but it could be anything. It could be, like you say, a baseball cap, or, and doesn't say anything's got to be black, white, red, can have designs on it, or whatever, like I say, people have nowadays. And that's not that's not what it never said in the law, and a person could do what they want in that situation.
Okay. Now, speaking about significance of different things, what is the significance of wearing a payas?
Very good. Well, see, first of all, let's start with the reason for it. Like I said, yarmulke was custom that became traditional part of the Jewish people. The payas actually is a law in the Torah. It says you shouldn't cut the corners of your head. I mean, like a bowl cut or something like that. They have the haircuts. Now, the reason for it, why did the Chumash of the Bible give one of these mitzvahs? It says because it says that there's many laws that you shouldn't be like the other nations. In those times, I mean, a little bit people have the same kind of haircuts today, that you shouldn't be too similar to the nations. And therefore, these kind of haircuts, the Jewish people should even look significantly at least different in certain senses. The major law, really, again, bottom line, what the law is, that the payas are called, what payas literally means corners, should extend to your cheekbone. If you feel your cheekbone goes to your middle ear, and if a barber ever says high ear, middle ear, low ear, the middle ear is like the minimum. Now, of course, there's the beard. It actually goes together in the same sense as you shouldn't cut the corners of your hair, and you shouldn't cut the corners of the corners of your face. Let's say your jaw, your two sides of your jaw, higher jaw, lower jaw, and your chin. And that's why there's different interpretations for the beard. Some say it shouldn't be with a straight edge. Certain people have electric razors that are allowed. Other people say that you should trim it. You shouldn't touch your face, but you can keep your beard. Lubavitcher says you can naturally see that they're more natural. We don't want to cut the. It's not what we don't want. It's the law has been defined differently in Orthodox Jews itself. Orthodox codifiers, you shouldn't even touch any part of the beard. But just a little more of an idea. It says that women don't, once you asked about payas, women don't have this law about cutting the corners, because it's just a little bit of the Gemara, because it says it's in one sentence, like I said, do not cut the corners of your hair, and don't cut the corners of your face, meaning the beard. So the Gemara, the Talmud learns out what applies to one applies to the other. The people who have beards have the first part of the sentence at the corner of the head. The women obviously don't have beards or can't have beards, so it doesn't apply to them the corners of their hair. So that the whole law only applies to men haircuts.
Okay. And all right. Now, one of my friends in school was he doesn't go to the school anymore, but he was Orthodox, and not completely Orthodox, but he was thinking about growing payas. His father, though, said that he was going to have trouble finding occupational opportunities in a Gentile world because they wouldn't accept the fact that he had payas, and he'd have trouble like for interviews and stuff. And would you think that that's accurate?
Well, a lot of people have that view. See, I mean, of course, I try to give both sides view. Like I said, with the Orthodoxy, I said the beard. I mean, we hold one way, but I'm also open to other people's views in this situation. My personal view, I mean, it's not mine, and like I try to say in the strictly Orthodox sense, would say that the Almighty sustains the world. Many people do have beards, and they wear yarmulkes, and they make a good living, and they on their own talents. And it's just the Almighty is in charge of the world. A lot of people will, on the other hand, and give you the second point of view, and in Orthodox Judaism itself, people will say when it comes to parnasa, making a living, a person can be a little bit lenient. Torah also, like I said, just like they respect a person's life, that they also respect that person has to make a living. No one should starve to death, obviously, and they should try to make a good living. So there will be other viewpoints, I will say, and people will say that some people feel if they wear a yarmulke to work or whatever, and people say, oh, you're Jewish. Like I say, maybe that Jewish person doesn't stand out. They would know they're Jewish. They don't look too different, but obviously when you start a yarmulke, you start with a payas, they look Jewish, and some people will have that view, that in order to make a living, a person doesn't have to stand out. There's different viewpoints on it.
On a more contemporary topic, a friend of mine on the football team was wondering who your favorite Jewish athlete was.
Well, it's not my Jewish athlete. I always liked, first of all, I grew up, I mean, I don't want to show how old I am compared to you over here, but I'm from Chicago originally, so I was like Ken Holtzman, because he was a pitcher for the Cubs. And there was Sandy Koufax, who, even when I was young, I know the famous story, he didn't, it was like Jewish pride with, now we're in Shabbos, on Yom Kippur, he didn't play on Yom Kippur, the World Series. But today, if you want to, like you say, contemporary, it's not, I'd like the Jewish coach. Marv Levy is the coach of the Buffalo Bills. So that shows that person with Jewish brains control and get into Super Bowl, even though I know he came in second place, but all right, pretty close. And I do watch that. And there is actually a magazine that's coming out with Jewish athletes, just about Jewish athletes. It's a brand new thing. I mean, I don't know how big it is over here, but it's funny. We always make jokes about that because I've had a few people on the show also talking about that. That it's not the biggest book in the world. It's actually the smallest book in the world, Jewish athletes. But there are really, in a way, and you'd be surprised, significant numbers. I mean, maybe not according to other ethnic groups, but it's not one or two around, and they have their fields and. In the Olympics in different countries. You wouldn't understand, like in Europe and things in Russia, that there are Jewish athletes that get themselves into the Olympics. And, you never hear about it except for guys, a baseball player or a football player in America.
But tennis.
Yeah, but even in, like you say, in the track or whatever, I mean, maybe they're not the best in the world also, so you may not hear about them, but they are part of the teams, and they do get into the Olympics in other countries, in South America also. So it's not one of their... I guess the Jewish forte is athletes, but all right. Have a few people there also.
All right, let's see here. I have a friend he goes to Bethlehem, and his parents are both Jewish, and they brought up their children Jewish, but unfortunately he's abandoned his heritage, and he considers himself to be an atheist. He gets very uptight when I approach him about Judaism, and or on the subject of his ethnic background. And I was wondering, how could I convince him that he doesn't need to abandon his religion entirely to lead a secular life?
Well, it's a difficult situation because I'm sure it's not just a detail to talk to him about it. He has to probably go back to the roots and see where his education, what kind of attitude he was raised up with. And first thing a Jewish person has to have is just being proud that he's Jewish. And obviously that person doesn't have any pride. And to get pride, a person has to understand what being Jewish is. Maybe a lot of times I know when I talk and dealt and sat down with people, sometimes they're scared about a little bit anti-Semitism to step out. I want to be like everybody else. Why should I be different? so therefore that they just don't want to know from anything that's Jewish because, listen, obviously the majority of the world, the majority of the United States, and the majority of Bethlehem is not Jewish, and they just feel, I just want to fit in, I don't want to be different. Or sometimes people have different problems, and they just don't see the reason for being Jewish, that they, maybe on Saturday they had to go to synagogue and everybody was having fun, and it's, I don't want to have this anymore. Why should I, not have any fun? A lot of people have different reasons for it, so you can't just give, like I say, a blanket answer to anybody. But the main thing is just to show a person that they can be proud to be Jewish, and if they're looking about a profession, that they could see, hey, listen, there's other Jewish people in this profession, or like you say, even athletes or whatever, they've made it, and really today, that's surely the case in America. I mean, we're not, maybe 50 years ago you would have to say it's, hard to be a Jewish person, and there's a lot of anti-Semitism, but look how many, see what his role model is and things like that, and see, hey, you can be proud, and this person is proud, and there's a lot of proud Jewish people in any profession, in any walk of life. And and no one's asking them, like, I don't know, that's what I'm saying, sometimes to be religious, but just the first thing is to being proud that they're Jewish.
Mm-hmm. Now, how do you think you'd, I was playing a board game with him, and Josh was there, and another friend was there, and we got into a discussion with him about Israel and how we were both pro-Israel. But he was
violently.
Yeah, he was violently against it. Almost, it was pretty sad, and we were trying to convince him that, I mean, even so,
there should be a homeland for
Jews.
Right, and
he just said we should assimilate everywhere. Basically.
Well, let's see where he's coming from once you say that. The point is, it just goes hand in hand, that a people that feel that they don't have Jewish pride, that the Jewish people, of course, the Jewish Israeli flag is a big Jewish star on top, and that they just don't want to know from being Jewish, and it's probably the root of assimilation. And you got to get to the reason why you feel so anti any Jewish feelings. It's hard to talk to people about that because it's emotional. I don't think there's anything that intellectually, like you say, you're going to say, well, it's a homeland, it's only right, and all the Jewish people need is one little strip of land in the world, and everybody else has, and they need it because there's so much oppression. Look at the Russian Jews when they had to get out. You had 500,000 Jews run out, and it could happen in anywhere. And we talked about many times on the show the importance of Israel, but it's hard to talk to people on an intellectual level with reasoning when it's more emotional. They feel something. So it's a little bit, I would just, even your friendship is important, I think. Just like you say, you have Jewish T-shirts, which I'd like to ask you. You've been asking me the question. I asked like one question, I get to ask you. But just saying that you're so highly visible as Jewish people, I think that's even important for him. Sometimes it's just, I know it may not sound like the biggest move in the world just to be friends or things like that, but sometimes that's even step number one. Just that you're Jewish and you come around, and just that I know people, you should know that, they're so assimilated, they don't even want to have Jewish friends. And so that's even one step to that they know, he knows that you're proud Jewish, students, and just that he just is acquainted with you, and that's good. So one last question. I get to have one question after so many questions. I see you have a Jewish shirt, and it's something unique I've never seen before. If you want to explain it to where you've got it from.
Okay. We both went to Spain with our school Spanish trip back in February. And we bought these in Cordoba, and these commemorate the expulsion of the Jews from Spain, if that's something to commemorate. And shows Columbus's ships, and I think.
I don't know if I can call it a commemoration, but more of a reminder that it happened, and a hope that it'll never happen again.
Very good. Sepharad, I just want to tell the audience that Sepharad means Spain and Spanish Jewry, and it's, of course, the 500 years since the Spanish Inquisition. We'll run out of time, but I want to thank both of you for coming for a very enjoyable show. I'm sure the viewers also have gained a lot of knowledge. And any more questions, of course, we're always open, and you're welcome back to ask any more questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks
a lot.
Shalom. Welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Delmar Chabad Center. Today's topic is kosher. Well, we don't have any beautiful recipes for you, and we don't have any luscious looking food to put on a table, but we're just going to talk about the laws of how to keep kosher. First of all, number one, many people don't understand what is kosher, the most basic question. And the number one question is to answer is like this, that kosher, and what some people think it is, that they say it's food blessed by a rabbi. Well, that isn't true at all. I know many people have that idea. They come up to me and they say, is that true, Rabbi? And that is not the right answer at all. That kosher food, and the word kosher literally means to prepare. It's proper, meaning that the food is prepared in a special way. It doesn't mean that it can be gefilte fish or chopped liver. It means, and we're going to get into the different categories of food prescribed by the laws that the Torah has brought down to us. Meaning, for example, let's take animals first. An animal that has to have two signs for it to render it kosher. Now it has to have split hooves, it's completely split, and it has to chew its cud. Well, of course, I hope you've seen an animal, but in any case, trust me on this one, that a cow does have both signs. For example, a pig has only one. It does have split hooves, and can check me out on this every time you go to a farm, but it doesn't chew its cud, so therefore renderings the pig non-kosher. Other foods, well, of course, I think people know by themselves that a cow and cow's meat is what you usually get at a supermarket or a kosher market. Also, that is kosher. Other societies have horse, for example, but that's not in the United States in any case, so usual case is cow. Certain things that are interestingly kosher are deer, which means venison, and they're actually thinking about having kosher venison and deer meat in New York State, because of course, as people know, there are so many deer even in our local area, but there are so many deer, so they were thinking of that, and it's in the works. Also, it's a funny thing that people would think that giraffe is also kosher. Trouble is, the rabbis, and we're going to get to it, the way we kill, or we call it shecht, slaughter an animal, it has to be cut through the neck. They don't know which part of the neck of the giraffe to cut, so therefore they left in a doubt. They say better to do without it. Other kosher animals, buffalo. A buffalo is a kosher animal. But like we said, a pig or a horse is not, because they lack the two signs. Now, as we said before, that we just said that you just can't say, okay, you have a cow, good, it's kosher. That's not the end of the story at all, far from it. So now we have a kosher animal in front of us. And of course, we'll take the cow, which is your more typical animal that is used today. Now it's sitting in front of us, or standing, or whatever, and it has to be killed, or we actually call it in Hebrew again, the word is shecht, or literally means slaughter, in the proper way. Now this is an argument not in Jewish law at all, because Jewish law is clear as a bell of what has to be done. Some people want to say, and in England, and they have sometimes troubles in Canada, they want to say that the way the Jewish law prescribes to kill an animal is unjust. Well, that isn't going to be the case, and that's why exactly I wanted to bring out this issue to you, that the reason that they do kill the animal, and we're going to say the way they shecht it, is they take a sharp knife. Now, this doesn't mean just one of your kitchen knives or whatever have you, or bread knife. It's got to be smooth. It's got to be totally smooth. And when the shochet, who's the slaughter, the ritual slaughter, checks the knife, and he has to check the knife. I can't impress upon you enough how particular they are about these laws. I know of a certain case where that the shochet, the slaughterer, found out after he was slaughtering a number of chickens on the line they call production line, as they have it today, and they found a nick in the knife the rabbi made the whole half a day's work non-kosher of many shaykhs, because they obviously, once they're slaughtered and killed, that they put them all in one bundle and they don't know whose is whose, and therefore they didn't know whose it was. They rendered it all non-kosher. Just can't impress upon you enough how particular they are. They take the knife and put it across the thumbnail just to be sure it's totally, totally smooth. If there's any nick in it, they got to work on it with a stone. Maybe it's worth to talk about it another time. Like, I just want to give a general overview to bring in a shochet and bring in how a knife is slaughtered. It'd be an not a knife is slaughtered, how a knife is prepared for slaughtering. And just, again, it has to be very smooth. Why does it have to be smooth? The next answer for that is very important. Because and they cut the animal through the neck. Now, what you do is you try to, it's not try, what you actually are doing is cutting through the jugular vein. Once the jugular vein is severed, the animal will die immediately. Now the question is pain. All right, it's dead, and no one can refute that. But what about the pain? Now, if it would have, that knife would have a nick in it, it would have a drag into the neck, and then it would cause some harm to the animal. As it is now, the simplest analogy that they bring out is that it feels like a paper cut. You get a cut, and ooh, look at that, a cut. You don't even know it hurt. Like if someone cut you with a knife, ooh, it's cutting into your skin, or like a bee sting or whatever have you. But like a paper cut that's so smooth, you didn't even know that it hurt you. Until afterwards, you find out, oh, look at this, I have a cut. The same thing that it happens to the animal. It's so smooth of a cut they demand that the animal doesn't know it hit him, and then actually, obviously, it dies. So therefore, and I try to impress upon you, because like I said, it is a current problem. It really isn't the United States, but in European countries, in Canada, you always see these issues come up that they say, oh, we don't believe the ritual slaughter is actually kind enough to animals. And the rabbis demand that there is actually one of the 613 mitzvos, commandments, is to not tsar bali chaim, it's called in Hebrew. It's called hurting or giving pain, literally, to an animal. This is a world that human beings can use and has the possibility to use, but on the other hand, and we talked about it a little bit with ecology, it doesn't give permission for anybody to go around destroying the worlds. That's why hunting is not allowed in Jewish law. Just to have a kick, so, oh wow, I hit the mark and I hit an animal, it's not allowed. You feel like you want to be a marksman, go shoot at a target, but not at animals, and don't kill animals. If you need to eat, that's a different story, but again, like we say, it wouldn't be kosher for a hunter to shoot a bullet at something, or an arrow or whatever have you, and kill that animal. It wouldn't be a kosher. Even though it's a deer, and we said a deer is a kosher animal, it has to be slaughtered in the proper way. All right. Enough said, even though it's not enough said, because there's more to talk about, but we have to move on. So we have a cow, for example. We had a kosher animal that's slaughtered in the right way, and we're still not done. Now the animal, there's another kosher law that you're not allowed to eat the blood of an animal. Well, of course, once you get sever the jugular vein, most of the blood leaves, but of course there's blood in the body, and what we eat, the meat, is really the muscle. Now, muscle has a lot of blood. Now, what should we do? Now, again, each idea which I talk about really has I'm just trying to make it short in our short allotted time, but we'll come back another time and talk maybe about each of these ideas separately, but suffice it to say that we have to salt. And now this isn't your table salt, it's grain salt. Many times you will see it in the stores in the kosher section of the supermarket. It's called coarse kosher salt. Well, there's nothing kosher about it. I mean, it is kosher, but it's just salt. But why did they say kosher salt? Because most people don't use coarse salt in their cooking, and that's why really the only time that they use it, for example, is to kosher meat. And what they do is they rinse off the piece of meat, they salt it, and it's got to be salted for at least a half hour. That draws this coarse, so see, the table salt will just be absorbed in the meat. Coarse salt will draw the blood out, then it has to be rinsed off, and then you have a piece of kosher meat. So it's very important. We see the human side of Torah again, because the blood is the life, it says. So therefore, it's not proper to eat the life force of the animal. It's enough to eat the meat itself. But the koshering process is very important. But one other thing that's very easy for us, and maybe people's their grandparents, maybe their parents if they're a little older, when they were from youth, remember that you had, and we'll talk about poultry certainly, but poultry or animals, you had to salt it yourself. They gave you a kosher piece of meat, and you had to go home and salt it. Nowadays, because of the efficiency that they salt it, either in the butcher shop or even sometimes right at the slaughtering house, that they salt the meat. So that's, for the most part, even though, and I know we can say in the Capital District here, that they do this already for us, but on the other hand, that they... for the kosher meat is even done in the slaughters, the production in the factory. But if you go out of town, be sure that it's needed to salt the meat. One little side note, again, just to make everything very short, liver is not only hard but impossible to salt because liver contains so much blood. You have to roast it on an open fire, and a hibachi, for example, would be good, and or else if the butcher shop does it for you, fine. But just a raw piece of meat, you cannot treat it like any other piece of meat because it has to be roasted. It contains so much blood. And now we have a kosher piece of meat. Now we're going to the next idea. There's another law. You cannot eat kosher meat with milk. Now, many of these laws, and I should really say right up front, that there are no reasons for the kosher laws. We talk up many times, many laws in Torah are totally understandable. Don't kill, don't steal. What kind of society if everybody could just go around killing and stealing? That's ridiculous. Everybody understands that. Certain laws, you wouldn't come to it by yourself, but once they tell you a reason, oh, I got it. For example, resting on the Sabbath. Many people would work 7 days a week. Many societies did do that. But on the society of Jewish society tells you God created the world in 6 days. He rested on the seventh day, so you should also. Oh, okay, so I see the reason for it, and now we see the reason for Shabbos, even though maybe by yourself you wouldn't get to it, like don't kill and don't steal. If we said, how should we're different human beings, how should we set up a society? 99.9% of the people would just say, hey, we have to put don't kill and don't steal into our law system. Now, the third category is there's no reason at all for the mitzvah. There's no reason for the commandment being. The reason for why there's no reason is that God gave us these laws and says we have to be subservient to Him. And certain laws may say, well, this is beautiful. Yeah, don't kill, don't steal. Sure, that's proper. And, hey, a day off for Sabbath. Wow, that's a good thing also. So therefore, you might think it's a nice society, and I'd like to do all these kind of laws because it's a comfortable life, keeping Torah mitzvahs. But to do something that is no reason for it, no rational basis for it, then obviously you're not doing it out of comfort. You're not doing it out of because you think it's a good thing. You're only doing it because of subservience to the one who's commanded you. So that's one of the reasons it's kosher. And again, we should say it up front. Many people say it's because of hygiene, cleanliness. We just said ourselves, it's got to be a clean animal. The pig is a little bit of a dirty animal. All right, cow is a cleaner animal. Look at that. We have to salt the meat, take the blood away. We wash the meat. That's another cleanliness thing. Fine and good that they may be all these things, but really it doesn't hold water. It's not the real reason for keeping kosher. The real reason, because there's no reason at all, because it is a mitzvah and we do what we're commanded to. Many people don't keep kosher. Say, well, I know it's for cleanliness, and I know the local supermarkets are very clean and meticulous. Maybe yes, maybe no. It's another show, and there's really so much to talk about. And we will bring in, we should bring in an interview also from the Consumer Reports from the state of New York. Not a rabbi, not somebody who's biased. The state of New York went in and saw, hey, listen, we have laws on the books in New York State about keeping kosher. Let's find out what's really happening in the slaughterhouses. So they took a big research, and that they looked into the kosher slaughtering factories and a non-koshering slaughterhouses, and they made many different big differences. And like I say, that's suffice it to say that there's a big difference in the animal and how it's prepared, the meat. But maybe we should talk about the consumers' affairs also about kosher meat. So milk and meat do not have a reason. That's how we started. But there are interesting, like we said, side effects, side ideas for it. It says it wouldn't be humane to cook a kid or a little baby calf in its mother's milk. Milk, what is milk? It comes from a mother, obviously, a mother cow. And a calf, not necessarily, obviously, every animal that we eat is a baby. Could be an older animal, but on the other hand, it has to be it could be a calf, and many times they do slaughter calves for the veal. And wouldn't be humane to cook a little baby calf in its mother's milk. So that's maybe a nice reason if you want to think of it that way, meat and milk. There's just so many laws to talk about. I know I'm skipping over many things. I just want to get into another thing because these are the things that people ask me, so therefore I'd like to just bring out people's questions that they give to me, and I'm sure maybe it's many of the questions that our listeners and our viewers would have also. So therefore we want to bring out that's an important idea also, that it just to clarify your questions also, even though you're not asking them. One idea that many people ask is glat. Sometimes there's kosher, and then sometimes there's glat kosher. So what is glat? Glat is a Yiddish word, a Jewish word that means smooth. Glat means smooth. What it means is as follows. Now, besides being a kosher animal, like a cow, and besides being slaughtered, it has to go through one other process, and that is that an animal cannot be dying of a disease. Let's say it would be, let's say the rabbi said in a year, like it's dying. Maybe it's alive now. Yes, it's walking around, and it's a live animal, but it's dying. It's in a sickness or something happened to it. Usually they call this word treif in Hebrew. Treif means from the word torf, to be ripped. The classic idea of being sick, I mean that a lion came over and like gored it or ripped it with its claws, and maybe it's alive still, but it's dying. Now, if an animal is dying, then it wouldn't render it non-kosher also. We have to have a live animal that's truly alive. Now, how do you know? Well, again, this is really these are laws how to be a rabbi. When they were a rabbi or given ordination, there's tests to be given and answers to be given to the people who are giving the questions, and their laws are mainly on kosher laws. So there's very intricate laws here. You have to be really know the inside and out of a cow, and what its property has to be able to walk. Just many laws. It's really not the scope of the program here. Now, suffice it to say, what I want to bring out as glat is the lungs. Lungs are very important. You don't breathe. You've had it, obviously. Not going to be living too long. So they take out the lungs of the animal. They blow it up. And that actually it's called a bodak, someone who checks, and he checks it with his hands around the inside of the lungs. Now, therefore, are there any abrasions, or that means that there's a little sick with these lungs? Well, it could be a disease, and that would render it not non-kosher. Wouldn't be glat. Glat means smooth, means the inside lining of the cow's lungs are smooth, which means they're not diseased, and therefore especially kosher. Many people, like I say, for that reason would hold by glat kosher. They want to be sure that the animal is really living, and but there are kosher that are non-glat, and that's where your difference is. It's a higher level of keeping kosher. So we've actually gone through the animal, just review for a second, that it's got to be an animal that has split hooves and chews its cud. Number two, that it has to be slaughtered in the proper way. We just said, and so for some people it's optional, that they have to be checked, the lungs, and that it's glat, it's proper kosher. Once they have the animal, the meat has to be salted. And most of the animal, though, really is kosher. Even, for example, we brought out the liver before that. That actually cannot be salted, but could be roasted. And actually the heart, even though people don't use it, can be, even though obviously there's a lot of blood in the heart, but it can be kosher in its own way. It has to be cut many times so the blood can drain, obviously, out. Brains can be kosher. I hope people are not having a problem with this, but they can be kosher. Tongue, anyway, is a delicacy of the animal. So there's really not too many problems of different parts of the animal, but there's one other part of the animal that is not kosher, and that's the gita nosh, it's called in Hebrew, the thinui vein, which runs to the bottom part of the animal. Now, the reason why that's not kosher, people have to go back to the Bible story. Yaakov had a fight with the angel, and Jacob had Jacob had the better of the angel. But before the angel departed, he touched his hip of Jacob, it says, and then it made him a little bit lame, and it says, oh, from now on, just to remember that the Jewish people cannot eat the sinui vein. Now, in an animal, that runs the bottom half of the animal. Now, let me explain to you just some practical ideas here. That certain times, like we say, animals are non-kosher. Maybe the knife wasn't good enough, or it dragged in the animal, or certain things, like we said, the lungs weren't smooth. Therefore, of course, you don't throw out a whole cow. No one has the money for these kind of things. It's ridiculous to even think about it. So therefore, usually and almost always with the kosher slaughterhouses, they're right next door in the same department or in the factory, whatever have you, as the non-kosher. So anything that's wrong with the kosher, they just give it over to the non-kosher and they sell it as non-kosher meat. It happens all the time, and in the Consumer Report, like I said, from the state of New York, it actually says certain things that they found diseased. They say they like a diseased wing. Don't get into the whole thing here, but they cut off the diseased wing and they give the rest of the chicken for parts to the non-kosher, where it wouldn't be kosher. Like I said, any disease on an animal wouldn't be kosher for the kosher department. So that's why the kosher is actually, many people have this idea, and many non-Jews I'm just talking about, that kosher is a high quality of meat, and really it is for that basis. That diseased meat that would be used for non-kosher would not be used for the kosher. Many, just by the way, many Muslims have kosher laws, and they also buy the kosher butcher shop. Like I say, many Gentiles go there not because of any kosher laws. They just want a higher quality of meat, which it really is. Back to the situation that this, you can pluck out this. Not you, I'm just saying if someone can, but it's a very big expertise to do it. Sometimes it's more economical just to cut off the bottom half of the animal. Like I say, you don't throw anything out because it's just economical. So they just give that over to the non-kosher, and they use it for sirloin steaks or round roasts that they use the backside of the animal. But it can be, and many times they do use this gidonufshin. They take it out of the sinew, out of the vein, out of the animal. So besides that vein, you can, like I go back to the story, use really the entire part of the animal. I think we talked about most at the level of cows. Surely we can't get to the whole idea of kosher. We're going to have to continue next week. But we still have time to talk about the other kind of animal, and that is poultry. Now, truth to tell, that the poultry is not really an animal. It's not a mammal. But as a cow, for example, as a deer, for example, and that they reproduce differently, laying their eggs, of course. But so therefore, it really is an argument, to tell you the truth, in the Talmud, is chicken or poultry, let's just say, kosher or not? I mean, not kosher. I just mean it surely is kosher. We'll get into it. But can it be? Is it considered like an animal? What would be the difference? Can you use a chicken with milk? If it's like an animal, like a cow, like no, like we said, if it isn't, it's a thing for itself, not like a cow, then maybe you're allowed to, because chickens don't have like milk, that's what I mean, that they're not mammals, they reproduce differently. But the rabbis say that it's rabbinically, it's really not a cow, but it's close to being a cow, so therefore rabbinically, these are decrees to keep you away from doing something wrong. We consider like meat, and therefore chicken and milk is also not allowed. What makes a poultry kosher? Certainly not the same criteria as an animal, split hooves and chewing their cud. Obviously, poultry don't do that. But this is a thing that's given over in the Bible. It's Masorah, it's called, the way it is given over by tradition, that certain animals that are non-kosher, I mean poultry, are written in the Bible. You can look it up, the ostrich and the raven. Again, we're lucky in the United States, the major bulk of poultry is chicken, and that is a kosher animal. I don't know what's next, duck or turkey. Maybe they use turkeys more. I don't know the production, but both of them, turkey and duck, are both kosher. And pigeon is kosher. I know people who have had pigeon. So these things, for the most part, and I think we're dealing with 99% and higher of the poultry that is used, in the United States anyway is kosher. But remember this again, that's what makes it kosher. It's handed down to the Torah. We know a chicken is kosher, but it has to be slaughtered also the correct way. And it's, again, the shochet, the ritual slaughter, has a smaller knife. Obviously doesn't have to have the same size knife for a chicken it is for a cow. It's a slaughter through its neck. It doesn't feel any pain. It's like a paper cut, as we said. It gets kosher that way. Its meat also has to be salted, as we just said about the cow, the same way, washed off, salted, rinsed off afterwards, and then you have a kosher chicken. You're ready to make your chicken soup. But like we said, it is meat enough, not technically 100% meat, but it's meat enough, according to the rabbis, where the chicken or duck or turkey, whatever have you, poultry, cannot be used with milk or any kind of milk products in it. So it has to be completely separate. So we have the animal, and we really didn't get to too much any of the laws. I mean, we talked a lot about kosher, but I guess there's just so much kosher laws that have to be talked about. We're going to have to continue even next week to talk about the kosher laws and the different items that obviously they render, that we're going to be talking about: eggs, wine, fish. That there's so many different things to talk about in kosher law. Hopefully we'll be able to talk about all these ideas next week. And again, to review the mammal, the mammals have to be a kosher animal by chewing its cud, splitting its hoof, slaughtering the proper way, checking the lungs if it's good, and checking the animal as a whole that it's proper, and then salting it. For poultry, it has to be given over to us, and which really isn't such a problem because, like I said, most people anyway eat in America chicken, duck, and turkey. Therefore, after that, it has to be slaughtered the right way, and then it has to be salted. And both animal and the chicken, poultry, cannot be eaten with milk. We'll have to continue next week, please God, talking a little bit about more kosher. Thank you very much.